I've always felt like I didn't belong in my family. They never understood me, and I couldn't fit in with them. My interests were constantly mocked, and my joys were never acknowledged. Yet I found something strangely comforting living in New York, where I actually felt accepted. But then, a Facetime call with my mom made me realize something bitter. Why did she react that way? Since I was a child, I've always felt like I didn't fit in with my family. They had interests that I could never connect with, and those things seemed to create an invisible barrier that made me feel like an outsider. My parents and brother were always immersed in board games, video games, and science fiction novels. Meanwhile, I had no interest in any of those things. I couldn't even understand why they would spend hours playing games that didn't excite me, and I couldn't imagine myself getting lost in fantasy stories. While they discussed characters and imaginary worlds, I was left silently listening, unsure of what to say. When I was younger, I tried so hard to fit in. I joined games I didn't enjoy just to please them, but each time, I only felt more alienated. I tried reading the books my family loved, but when I stopped because I couldn't continue, I could feel their disappointed looks, making me feel like I had done something wrong. My efforts were never rewarded. My brother constantly mocked my interests. The movies I loved, the activities I wanted to join, he would ridicule them. I still remember the times when I excitedly shared a movie I'd watched, and he would start making fun of me, calling me the odd one out, and saying I didn't understand what the family liked. Not only did this hurt, but it also made me feel isolated in my own home. What hurt me the most was that my parents never stood up for me. They just watched or sometimes even joined in mocking me. This made me feel even more unimportant. Every time I discovered something new or found something I wanted to share with them, I always hoped they would understand and we could enjoy it together. But every time, I was met with indifference or even criticism. One time, I was so excited about a movie I thought the whole family would enjoy. I hoped we could watch it together and talk about it, but instead of excitement, they started mocking it from the very start. Every time, my efforts ended in disappointment. Even though I wanted to share with my family, I gradually realized they never really cared about what I liked. Once I was so excited about going on a trip with my friends, and when I shared pictures of our outfits with my mom, she just laughed and didn't respond positively. I had hoped for some encouraging feedback, but no, it just made me feel even more down. While I loved my family, that love wasn't enough to mask the feeling of being abandoned. These things kept repeating, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own family. Although I tried to fit in and seek acceptance, I realized that they might never truly understand or love me the way I wanted. That feeling of not belonging haunted me every day, making it impossible to find peace in the very home I called family. When I decided to move to New York for school, I thought it would be an opportunity to start fresh, to find a space where I could truly be myself, without worrying about being mocked or not being accepted. Despite trying for years to fit in and seek acceptance in my family, I realized not everyone could understand or love me the way I wanted. New York seemed like the place where I could live freely, no longer having to pretend like I had for so many years. And I wasn't wrong in thinking that. After just a few weeks living with 2 close friends and one of their cousins, I felt a noticeable difference. Living with people who not only respected but also encouraged my interests, I felt like I had found a place where I truly belonged. Here, I didn't have to hide my joy or be afraid of being ridiculed for the things I loved. We explored the city together, participated in activities I genuinely wanted to try, and each day I felt like I was truly living, no longer having to live in the shadow of a family that never accepted me. However, I couldn't completely escape the emotional weight of my family. Even though I was far from them, the feeling of abandonment, the indifference I had endured, still lingered. Whenever I thought about my family, a sense of emptiness crept back. The moments of enduring their coldness, their lack of interest in what I did, still haunted me. I had once hoped that one day they would understand me better, that they would see me as valuable and part of the family, like everyone else. But now, I realized those hopes only led to more disappointment. One day, my mom called me on Facetime to check in. I felt a sense of excitement wanting to share my new life in New York with her, about the experiences I was eager to have. I told her about my first Christmas in the city, how we planned to visit cool places. I hoped she would be happy for me, that she would feel proud that I had found a place where I truly felt like I belonged. But when I saw her expression, I felt a strange emptiness. She just shrugged and shook her head, her face showing no interest at all in my joy. Even as I shared my excitement, she just lightly laughed and didn't say much more. That moment made me realize that no matter how hard I tried to share, she would never truly care about what I loved or felt. At that moment, I realized I couldn't hide my emotions any longer. Even though I was living in a space where I felt loved and accepted, the memories of my family still haunted me. My mom's indifferent attitude, her lack of concern, made me feel like I was once again being pushed aside, just like in the past. I knew then that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine anymore. I had to speak the truth. After the Facetime call, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's attitude. Although I was living in a new, loving and accepting environment, strange feelings kept bubbling up inside me. It seemed like I couldn't escape the feeling of being abandoned, of being ignored. A feeling I had carried with me for years within my family. Every time I tried to share something joyful, it always ended with my mom's indifference. I couldn't pretend anymore. That feeling, the indifference from my mom, burned deep inside me, making me unable to stop thinking about everything that had happened in the past. How could I forget all those times I tried to fit in with my family? The times I joined in on games I had no interest in, just hoping they would see me. My mom stood still, never speaking up when my brother mocked me, and I never got any support from her. Those were memories I couldn't erase, even though I had left them behind. I decided I had to face the truth. I could no longer live in the illusion that things would change, that someday my mom would understand me. I couldn't keep enduring the feeling of being left behind. What I felt, what I went through, was real. And even though my family might love me, I knew deep down that they never really liked me. They never took the time to understand me, to care about the things I loved or the things I did. All I ever got was indifference, cold stares. I couldn't stay silent anymore. All those years living in this family, I had always felt like an outsider. Every time I tried to share, to find empathy, I was met with indifference and mockery. At this point, I didn't want to keep those emotions bottled up inside anymore. I didn't want to keep pretending that everything was fine, that everything was okay. One day, I decided to call my mom. My heart was racing. Not because I was worried about the conversation, but because I knew I was going to say things I had kept hidden for so long. When my mom picked up, I couldn't hold back. "Mom, you don't have to pretend anymore," I said, my voice low. "You don't have to pretend to care about what I do. I know that you and Dad never really liked me. You never cared about my interests. You never took the time to understand what I did." My mom was stunned, and then she asked, "Why would you say something like that? Your dad and I love you." But I couldn't accept those words. I continued, "Maybe you and Dad love me, but I know you don't like me. Every time I share something, you just shake your head or laugh at it. You never ask me about what I'm doing, and when I decided to leave, you just said you'd turn my room into a library." When my mom heard this, I saw her fall silent. I didn't want to say anything more because I had said everything I needed to. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was an important step I had to take to free myself from feeling trapped in unhealthy relationships. Even though I had left my family, I realized that I needed to speak the truth, not only to heal myself, but also to move forward in my new life. However, right after that conversation, I felt a strange emptiness. Part of me still longed for understanding from my mom, hoping that she would change. But I knew that I no longer had high expectations for them. It was the truth, and despite the pain, I accepted it. I could no longer live in a family where I never felt accepted. This feeling wasn't just about not being loved, but also about the deep lack of understanding I had been seeking all this time. A week after the conversation, my mom called back. Her voice sounded a bit unfamiliar. Not the usual cheerful tone, but a serious and low one. "You told me that, but I still love you," she said. "It's just that I don't know how to show it." I felt something strange hearing those words. My mom tried to explain, but I knew that words couldn't change what had happened in the past. While I wanted to believe she understood, I couldn't overlook what had transpired for so long. Mom said that she still loved me, but I didn't feel it through her actions. Every time I needed encouragement, every time I sought advice, I was met with silence. Whenever I shared my joys, she would look at me with an unfamiliar gaze, as if I were doing something wrong. That's why I couldn't continue living in this pretense. I understood that not everyone can express love in the same way, but I needed to be loved in a way that I could understand, in a way that I could feel. In the end, I decided that I wouldn't let these relationships continue to affect my new life. I had found the family I truly needed, sincere friends, people who supported and loved me without expecting me to change. My time in New York made me realize that I deserved to be loved and accepted for who I am. I no longer had to change to please anyone. The feelings of abandonment and hurt hadn't completely disappeared, but I had learned to accept them. I couldn't change the past, but I could decide how I live in the future. And my future would no longer be bound by a family where I didn't feel like I belonged. Although I decided not to let my family continue to affect my new life, the feelings of hurt and loneliness still sometimes surfaced within me, especially in moments when I faced challenges or had to make important decisions. I couldn't deny that, even after leaving them, there were times I wished I could receive support from my family. I remember when I was younger, I thought that if I did better, if I tried harder, my mom would love me the way I wanted. But now I understand that this isn't something that can be changed. However, I have learned to seek support and affection from others. The friends I met in New York are not just friends, they truly became my family. We share important moments together, support each other in work, and especially in times of difficulty. I have found people who truly accept me, without pretense, without the fake relationships I once experienced in my family. One evening, when we were walking down the street together and sharing stories about life, I felt a clear difference between what I have now and what I once had. My friends not only accepted but also valued what I do and who I am. We never have to pretend or try to change ourselves to fit in with others. It was a feeling of freedom that I had never experienced before, even within my own family. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't need to wait for acceptance or love from people who would never truly understand me. I had found what I truly needed. Although family is still a part of my life, I no longer let them determine my worth. I have come to realize that I deserve to have healthy relationships where respect and love are real, not fake emotions or lack of concern. I have started learning to love myself, though sometimes the past still lingers. But I no longer let those hurts define me. In fact, looking back, I realize that leaving my family and living the life I want is not a form of giving up, but a way for me to seek peace for myself. The efforts to fit in, the attempts to please others, only brought disappointment and hurt. Now, I no longer have to seek validation or acceptance from anyone. I have found freedom, and that is the most important thing I can have right now.